lay in a small, sun-drenched village, where ancient fig trees whispered secrets to the wind and the stone paths remembered every single footstep. There lived a child named Noam. Now, Noam had quick feet and eyes as bright as polished stones, but he also had a very, very fast tongue. His words could leap and spark and sometimes even sting, often before he even noticed they were gone. They were like little birds, quick to take flight from the cage of his teeth, soaring out into the world without a map or a destination. One morning, as the sun was just beginning to warm the stones of the village well, Noam overheard something curious. He leaned in, his ear close to the hushed conversation of two neighbors. He listened. He gasped. And just like that, a secret had landed on his tongue. By lunchtime, that secret had grown wings and raced through the entire village faster than a child's rolling hoop. By sunset, the secret was no longer a secret. It had changed shape, twisted and turned, growing sharp teeth and shadowy claws as it passed from person to person. Friends who usually greeted Noam with a smile now frowned as he passed. Neighbors who once offered him sweet dates now whispered behind their hands. And in the center of the square, a boy named Ari stood all alone, his eyes fixed on the ground, his shoulders slumped. A heavy, unfamiliar thump echoed in Noam's chest. It was a feeling of cold stone where warmth used to be. What did I do? He wondered, the question getting stuck in his throat. He watched the whispers float between people like dark, swirling smoke, and he knew, somehow, he was the source of the fire. Noam wanted to fix it. He desperately wanted to put things right. But how do you catch words once they have flown away? How do you unring a bell? That night, sleep wouldn't come. Noam tossed and turned, his tongue feeling too big and clumsy for his mouth. His thoughts were a mess, tangled like a knotted ball of string he couldn't begin to unravel. The moonlight streamed through his window, painting stripes on the floor, but it offered no comfort. Just as he was about to give up on sleep entirely, he heard a soft sound. Tap, tap, tap. It came from his window. He sat up, his heart fluttering. There, framed by the window, stood an old teacher from the village, whose eyes were kind, filled with a gentle understanding, and his beard was as silver as the moonlight itself. Come, the teacher said, his voice a soft, low hum. Let me show you the true power you hold. The teacher led Noam not to the village square, but out to a quiet, moonlit field just beyond the last houses. The air was cool and smelled of night-blooming flowers. Well, on the ground, side by side, lay two simple clay plates. The teacher gestured to the first one. On it was warm, freshly baked bread, a glistening pool of golden honey, and sweet ripe fruits that shone in the moonlight. It was a plate of comfort, of nourishment. Then he pointed to the second plate. On this one lay sharp thorns, dark, gritty ashes, and bitter herbs that gave off a pungent, unpleasant smell. It was a plate of harshness, of sorrow. The teacher looked at Noam, his kind eyes searching the boy's face. Which of these, he asked, comes from the tongue? Noam blinked, confused. He looked from the beautiful plate to the ugly one, and back again. The answer felt both impossible and obvious. Both, he whispered. The old teacher nodded slowly, a small smile touching his lips. The tongue is a very small part of the body, he said, his voice weaving through the quiet night. But he can build the grandest bridges, connecting one heart to another. And with the same ease, it can burn down entire forests, leaving nothing but devastation behind. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. Then he gave Noam his challenge. Tomorrow, he said, his gaze firm, when the village gathers, you must choose which of these two plates you will serve. The next day dawned bright and clear. but a cloud of tension hung over the village square. Everyone was gathered. The hurtful rumor still buzzed in the air like a swarm of angry hornets. Noam's heart pounded against his ribs like a frantic drum. He took a deep breath and stepped into the center of the crowd. The words, the excuses, the defenses, the easy replies pressed against his teeth, ready to rush out, ready to run and hide. But then he remembered the 2 plates. He remembered the teacher's words. He paused. He took another breath, a slow, deliberate one. This pause was harder than speaking, braver than shouting, and in that silence, he found his strength. "I spoke too fast," Noam said, his voice ringing out, clear and steady. "And because I was not careful, I hurt someone. I'm sorry." A hush fell over the crowd. Every eye was on him. Ari, who had been standing at the edge of the crowd, looked up, his expression full of surprise. Noam continued, choosing each word with the care of someone placing a precious, fragile stone. "The story you all heard," he said, looking around at the faces of his neighbors, "is not true. It was a shadow of the truth, twisted and made ugly. Please, let me tell you what truly happened." And he did. With every careful, honest word he spoke, the dark, shadowy whispers seemed to shrink. The air grew lighter. The angry buzzing faded into silence. The hard lines on people's faces began to soften, replaced by understanding. The words he chose were not like stinging insects, but like beams of light, chasing the darkness away. Just as Noam finished his story, a new silence fell. Then Ari stepped forward. Shalad. He walked right up to Noam, and for a moment, the whole village held its breath. "I forgive you," Ari said, and his voice was clear. And then, something even more amazing happened. Ari smiled. It was a small smile, but it was as bright as the morning sun. The crowd let out a collective gasp of relief, and smiles began to blossom on other faces. Too, Noam looked around for the old teacher, wanting to share this moment, wanting to thank him. But he was gone. There was no sign of him anywhere. And then Noam's eyes fell to the ground where he had stood. There, side by side, lay 2 empty plates. Both were perfectly clean, shining in the daylight. And in that instant, Noam understood. Thorns and the honey, the bridges and the forests, the choice had always been his. It was always up to him which plate to serve. From that day on, Noam's tongue did not grow quieter, but it did grow wiser. He learned that words have the power to wound and the power to heal. He learned that once they are spoken, they travel far beyond your control. And most importantly, he learned that sometimes a thoughtful pause can be much braver than a thoughtless shout. The moral of his story is a simple one for all of us. Before your words take flight and run free, take a moment to teach them where to go.